Should you self-publish or get a literary agent? How do you go about deciding? My name is Gina. I'm an author, editor, publishing professional. I help you make your writing better. I absolutely will not make this decision for you. I can, however, give you information so that you can make the decision that is best for you and your work right now, with the knowledge that this might change in the future for other books or for other stages in your career. Let's get into some of the pros and cons of both. These are going to be slides that are taken from a class that I am teaching this fall. It is called You Wrote a Book, Now What? So we're going to talk, and I'm not going to go through the entire class because it's a 50-minute long class, and it will be up on my Patreon later on this fall. But in the meantime, we can go through some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about. So traditional publishing, the big pros of traditional publishing is that the publisher assumes all financial risk. You as an author never have to pay a single cent if you are planning to go through traditional publishing. You do not pay your literary agent until you get an advance. They just take a cut off the top of that. You do not pay to publish. You do not pay for cover design or for editing. You can pay for like writing conferences or classes to learn how to write. You can pay for some editing or some like contests ahead of time to help you get a leg up, but those are not necessary. You can absolutely functionally go from sitting down and having an idea and writing your first draft to having your published book in your hand without spending a single cent in traditional publishing, if that is what you want to do. Oftentimes people hear the words an advance on royalties and they think they're going to have to pay that money back if they don't sell well, and that's not true. If your book bombs, the publisher assumed all financial risk, so that is not your problem. Second big pro here is that it is the widest possible reach for distribution. That does not mean that self-publishing has no distribution, but traditional publishing has more. They have contracts existing with every single bookstore. They have contracts existing with school districts and universities, and they have a better distribution for printing all of these things very, very quickly and having them in bookstores ahead of time. A lot of self-publishers do print on demand because printing books is really expensive. They have reach with foreign markets and submarkets and all of these other ways that your book can be distributed. They have ways to get it into a library that self-publishers don't necessarily have access to. And I know that self-publishing is improving and increasing in this, but it isn't there yet. Traditional publishing still has the widest reach for distribution. And then lastly, you have an experienced team on your side advocating for you. Everyone from your literary agent to your editor, to your proofreader, to your copy editor, to your cover designer, you know that these people are experienced, that they have been vetted, that they have a job on the line here. If you pay a freelancer, you are getting whatever quality you think that you can wrangle up rather than something that has been vetted through a professional process ahead of time. There are some excellent freelancers out there. I am a freelance editor and I'm very proud of the work that I put out there. There are some fantastic freelance cover designers, but that is up to you to vet that quality, and I'll get into more of that in a second. These people have already been vetted, and that's not your responsibility to make sure that they have the credentials to do that work. They're already on your team. They're ready to go. The cons are that it is slow as hell. It is really, really, really slow. If you are a super fast writer and you turn in your draft and you get it to your literary agent, you go out on submission, it can take like a year for them to get you a contract. And then even once you have a contract, it sometimes can take like 2 years from the time that you sign the contract for that book to actually out on shelves. Like, it is really, really slow. Part of that is the quality control process that we talked about, and part of this is the fact that these are just huge billion-dollar corporations, and part of it is that there are so many people competing for these spots that there is a lot of slush to wade through, and so it takes a long time. Publisher and agent keep a cut of your profits, and yes, in self-publishing they keep a cut also, but it's a bigger cut here because they're the ones who assumed all of the financial risk. Your literary agent worked for free for a really long time before they got paid, and so there's people taking a cut of your money. It is extremely competitive and it is for profit, which means that they are looking for books that are going to sell and make them money, not necessarily books that are amazing and wonderful. Like, though there's a lot of overlap on that Venn diagram, like the books that will be profitable and the books that are amazing have a lot of overlap, but the goal is not to find art. The goal is to find something that will make money, which means that you often are going to lose some creative control, because if you don't want to compromise on this one thing, there's 97 other people behind you who have written something very, very similar who are willing to compromise. Or there are 97 other people who got there ahead of you, and now your book feels a lot like everything else that's already been done and you're kind of too late. So these two kind of go together, and it makes it difficult to break in a lot of ways. There are a lot of people who want to be authors, there are a lot of people who have the skills to be authors, and there there are a lot of people who have access to the resources to become authors, and so this is getting more and more competitive every day. All right, so let's talk about the pros and cons of self-publishing. Pros are that you have full creative control. Nobody's going to change your title. Nobody is going to make you change that thing about that character that everybody says is annoying, but you really love it. You get to be totally and completely in control. You decide what your covers are going to look like. You decide when they get put up. You decide if your book is only 37,000 words long, but it's a full story. You get to be in charge of that. Nobody can tell you no. It moves at whatever speed you want it to. So if you're able to crank out 12 books a year, great, wonderful. You can crank out 12 books a year. Nobody is going to stop you. And nobody else takes a cut of the profits. There is obviously Amazon takes a chunk, or they take a much smaller piece. So like Ingram and Amazon, they take a tiny chunk off the top of it just for the privilege of like using their digital space out in the world. So there is some taken off the top, but because you get to set your own prices, you feel much more in control. And a lot of self-publishers feel like they're not paying anybody else, even though, yes, the self-publishing platforms take a chunk of your publishing royalties as well. It just is, people view it differently for whatever reason. The cons are that you are the one who assumes all of the financial risk, and this can be very expensive indeed, depending on what skills you come into this with and depending on what your network looks like. If you're not paying in cash hard dollars, you will be paying in your time. You cannot put up a quality product without investing in it. You will either invest money or time, more likely both. Remember how I said you have full creative control and nobody's going to tell you no? Nobody's going to tell you no. You are 100% responsible for this process. I think a lot of people are like, oh, I'm self-publishing, and they do not realize that that means that they have become a publisher. You are now responsible for all of those decisions. When do marketing ads go up? When do you decide to pull it if it's working versus if it's not working? When do you decide to continue a series versus cancel it because it's not making you any money? When are you loyal to your readers, and when are you loyal to your own pocketbook and supporting your family? You are the one in charge of every single one of those decisions. And if you don't want to be like a manager boss person responsible for firing people, maybe you're not maybe you don't want that kind of control. Maybe you don't want to be calling those kind of shots. There is limits to the distribution. Like I said, this is improving. This is getting better every single year, but there are still some limits. I often see self-publishers complaining about the fact that their library won't buy their books, that they won't take self-published books. Like I said, it's getting better, but there are still limits on this, and you need to take that into consideration. There are limited eligibility for things like awards, book clubs, publicity tours, things like that. Sometimes, like radio shows, won't take you if you're a self-published author. I know that like the Comic-Con, I live in Phoenix, and we have our fan fusion. They won't take self-published authors unless there is something else that they are able to offer to the audience. So there's some limited ability to be able to do your own publicity. You can't be shortlisted for certain types of awards if you aren't nominated by your publisher, and so there's some limitations there. Similarities and difference, quality and value. People who are traditional publishing versus self-publishing, they care very much about putting good books out into the world. You are going to be able to find beautiful, fantastic, wonderful books in both markets, and you are going to be able to find some stuff that was written very quickly without a lot of care put into it in both markets. People are equally dedicated to their craft. The authors who are putting this work out, they care. Even if that book in particular got written very quickly, there still was a level of care and concern put into it, and they are still a real live person. And so this is the same. I will never come out and say like self-publishing is worse or traditional publishing is worse. Like, there's going to be times where you're going to find examples of both. It's equal. There is money to be made. If you are looking to get into this without spending any money, it has to be traditional publishing. But there is money to be made in both sides. And for every self-publisher that's like, I didn't make any money in traditional publishing, I've seen $1 million advances. People make money in both industries. I have talked to self-publishers who have shown their dashboards in writing conferences, and they're pulling down 6 figures a month. Like, there is lots of money to be made no matter which side of this you're on. Those people are rare. Most people have to keep a day job while they are writing, no matter which side of this they are on. And we've already talked about this. The difference is here, the assumption, who assumes risk, who is responsible for the process. Some people really want that institutional validation to say, I got published rather than I published myself. And then traditional publishing has a lot more ability to exploit subrights for you and to be able to negotiate things like film deals and translations and things like that. If you want more information about this piece, I can make a different video about that, but I think the rest of this we've covered already on previous slides. So which one is for you? I don't know. It depends on your level of risk tolerance, how much you believe in your dream, and how much you are willing to wait for it versus hustle for it. It's a totally and completely independent decision.